What is the difference as a leader between positivity that serves the situation and toxic positivity? So I have been thinking about this for a couple of reasons recently. And today on the podcast, I'm going to dive into why. I'm Suzanne Rath, and you're listening to Endures for your daily dose of endurance, leadership, and life lessons. So the first thing that spurred me to think about this was a New Yorker article on happiness and what it means to be happy. And I have my personal thoughts on happiness and how I would prefer to chase fulfillment and purpose, because to me, happiness is kind of like that moment on the summit, right? We also need to fall in love with the process and the journey. We can't just rely on this fleeting emotion of happiness, because for every bit of happiness we have, we can also have the lows and the hard parts and all the rest of it. But I read an article, or a post, I should say, by Harvey Lewis, who's a well-known ultra runner in the US, the other day. And he talked about how when people ask him how he's going in a run, he'll always say, "I'm amazing." And he said that the runners that start complaining about their, injuries or being tired or everything being hard, he starts to see that they drop out quicker. Now, is that correlation or causation? Are they dropping out because they genuinely are really fatigued? Or does putting this positive mindset, putting a smile on your face, saying "I'm doing amazing," does that actually make them last for longer? I know that my own philosophy as a runner is I try to smile as much as possible. I've worked really hard on falling in love with the process. That's why I do it. I'm not winning any Olympic medals, right? The time that we spend crossing a finish line or even getting a PB or getting a medal or whatever it is so short. So we actually need to like what we're doing and enjoy the process. And so to me, if I'm not, endlessly complaining about it, and sure, I'll have a little complain every so often, but if I can try and keep a smile on my face, if I can try and fall in love with the journey, it makes things a lot easier and I enjoy it a lot more, and I, continually replenish my love of it by that. But this also got me thinking about how we show up as leaders. Now, I have worked with people in the past who I would call their positivity just brushing things under the carpet. So the philosophy of going, okay, well, there is no problem. So, let's just say there's no problem all the time, and then everyone will believe that there's no problem. And I would probably class that as toxic positivity. And it made me question myself and think, oh, well, am I... if I try to be solutions focused, if I try to, control the controllables and try to not get caught up on the things that I can't control, or, waiting for everything to be perfect, does that make me toxically positive, if that is even a word, as a leader? And I came up with these 4 differentiation points, which may or may not resonate with you. So one is, we can be positive, but we need to also acknowledge maybe what's gone wrong or what hasn't been great. So it could be, look, the last quarter, the last year wasn't great, but here's what we're doing to fix it. Or I believe in us, or I think that we're really great. I think we need to work really, really hard together to achieve X, Y, and Z. Right? So we're naming the hard thing, but we are bringing a positive spin on it, okay? Different from the good old sandwich of yore, which everybody has pretty much twigged onto right now. The second thing is, if we still leave room for people to say they're not okay or something's not okay. So it's not about dismissing people with going, no, everything's fine, and let's just put a band-aid on it because we want to avoid uncomfortable conversations. I think it's always good to reflect on what we could do better, and obviously give people that space to think, while still being positive and being solutions focused and focusing on what we can control, right? That self-composure, that self-regulation are essential skill sets in life, and I think we need to model them and not get caught up into the, okay, everything is terrible complaints fest, because complaining is addictive, okay? And we don't want to be there, and it is not good leadership to be down in the trenches completely bitching, moaning and whining, for want of a better word. If it's proportionate to the situation, right? So like, if something terrible happens and we're going around like we're at a party or a wedding, that's not ideal. So we need to obviously practice empathy. We need to practice cautious positivity sometimes, right? If things are going really bad, you know, if you're in a massive cost of living crisis, if you're in a pandemic and terrible things are happening, we need to temper that positivity and what we can control with a level of realism, right? But we still, as leaders, have to keep the spirits up. We have to galvanize people around the thing, and we have to set the vision and the standards. And then the fourth piece is if we pair that positivity with agency and not use it instead of it. And this kind of harks back to what I was saying about not refusing to accept that bad things are happening because we don't want to deal with it. Okay, that to me is toxic positivity. So saying, oh yeah, everything's fine and we're all great and isn't everything great and we're all a great team, instead of actually dealing with the issues afoot. So positivity, ultimately, if it is in service of our vision of clarity and of action, that 100% is useful. We just need to become situationally aware, emotionally aware to the things around us, and ensure that everybody, in as much as possible, has a voice, and our positivity is not outruling the sound of that voice. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow for more from Endures.